and welcome to the KB Michelle Green podcast. Thank you for listening, and I hope that you enjoy. Make sure that you like, subscribe, and share. We look forward to you setting your notifications and listening in. Thank you. In today's podcast, I would like to talk about our mindsets. Our mindsets from the perspective of when you are thinking on a certain level that everyone around you and the world as it is viewed from your perspective is all one way. And the mindset that is hard to change from where you believe that things are in the world, like how everything processes, what everyone thinks, and, just deciding that you don't want to believe anything different, that there is absolutely no opportunity for you to have a different kind of perspective. So I wanted to talk about this on the podcast today because I had a conversation with someone, a loved one, and in the conversation, I was actually on Netflix watching Bridgerton. And in the process of the show on Netflix, if you haven't watched Bridgerton, it's a good entertainment. It's definitely good entertainment. So anywho, I was watching the show, and in the show that was released recently, a new set of episodes, there was a young man who family came into wealth, and they became wealthy, but previously they were not wealthy. And I was having a conversation with someone about the mindset that this young man on the show had built him and his family up to a certain level of income. Let's say he went from a 4 or 5 figure income to maybe a 6-figure income. And he worked hard to do it. He put in his efforts. He was, really into making this change for his family, and they were really established and comfortable. And there was a auntie of his wife's who passed away and left their son her entire inheritance. And by doing so, it went from them being, let's say, an example of a 6-figure income to a maybe 8-figure income, I would say, because they never would have to worry about money ever again. They would never have to worry about, how they're going to do things. Everything was established completely. All they had to do was just walk into the house. They had clothes, they had shoes, they had vehicles, they had, transportation, whatever, communication, anything that they could think of, they had that. And in the conversation that I had with the loved one, I said, hey, what is your opinion about if you had built your family up to a degree of having your own business, going from a 4 or 5 figure income to a 6-figure income, and you guys were comfortable, everyone knew you in the town, and you had this bar, because on the show he had a male lounge basically, and the male lounge allowed him to be very prosperous. He was able to really be well known in the town, and everything that he had put all of his blood, sweat, and tears into. And I asked the question to the person I was talking to and said, hey, would you be willing to give this up? all of the blood, sweat, and tears that you put into this business as a requirement to completely solidify all the funds for your future, with your son inheriting from his great auntie. I said, would you be willing to give it up? Because on the show, it was a disgrace for him to keep what he had put his blood, sweat, and tears into. Now, this meant a lot to me because I am one of those people who came from very little and grew and is still growing business-wise. Excuse me. And so I completely understand when you have something that God puts in your spirit. He creates something from nothing, he gives you this idea and you run with it. And maybe it is a struggle and up and down, for so many years or months or whatever. I would say years because it definitely didn't take me months to build what I have now. Excuse me. I have been doing what I've been doing over 30 years. I have started with a financial advising service, providing financial advice. And then I went into my own business, my own baby. My first baby was credit repair services. So I built that company. And next I went into a nonprofit, which, was still slow, kind of building and working my way up, understanding how that operates, but definitely being able to provide the less fortunate with education on how to get jobs and how to, manage their finances and different things like that. And then, now we're into my third business of my own, which is a business university for entrepreneurs. And so if I were to have that question turned around on me, then I would certainly analyze, look at everything that I had to do in order to get to where I am today. And if the end result was that I didn't even have to work towards through any of the businesses to go from a 6-figure income to a 8-figure income, I would not be offended. I wouldn't be offended at all. But the question was, because on the show, the young man had to give up his men's lounge so that he would not be disgraced among the 8-figure people. And that was the question that I asked someone. And I said, what would be your thing? And they told me that they would not give up the lounge, that they would not be comfortable with it. It would be very challenging for them to give it up. And, if they could keep it in any way, then they would keep it, regardless of what the laws of the land would say, regardless of what people would, require of him in order to continue the inheritance. So they were saying that if they were in that person's shoes, that what they would do is they would not give up this thing that they have built and put their hard-earned blood, sweat, and tears into. Now, I can say that if you had caught me a few years ago, that probably would have been my answer too. But the thing is that in listening to the other person share what they would do, I realized that I've grown and that my mindset has shifted. My mindset has changed. I think that sometimes we get a little bit too tight with what it is that we originally start. And I began to think about, what if that were my situation? What if not one effort of what I put into any of the businesses that I had suddenly didn't matter. And I had an opportunity to go from a 6-figure to an 8-figure income. But I would have to let go of and let someone else take over the previous businesses that I opened and established. I would have to let go of or possibly even close down the businesses that I previously established. I really wouldn't want to close the businesses because it is something that definitely God has put in my heart. I would certainly expand the businesses, but I would be willing to give those businesses away. And the reason behind that is because my mind has shifted. When we think about what God has or what we have, cultivated and what God has cultivated in us to do, whether we are 6 figures, 7 figures, or even 5 figures, it still matters. The journey matters and the information matters as we go through each day in life. And we're thinking about, hey, I did the work. So now where is my reward? I did the job. I worked and did exactly what I was told to do. I tried to do it right. I messed up a few times, but that's human nature. It is human nature for us to mess up several times. The more times that we fail means the more times that we are closer to succeeding. So I get all of that. And I think that we just hold on too tightly, though, to the thing that we first do. My mentor taught me about this first truth. Apostle Ron Carpenter is my main mentor, pastor, coach, I would say. And he said in one of his messages that there is this thing called first truths. And whenever you deal with a first truth, it's like it's the hardest thing for you to separate your life from. And so I was thinking like, wow, if that were me and I had this opportunity, I would have to let go. And I thought about the mindset of the person I was talking with and how they were saying that they could not let go. And I was having an image in my mind of God giving us something that is so much better and so much greater to manage, to take over, to care for, to be able to be blessed with something greater instead of just the small thing that we think is everything, because we put so much effort into it that it would mean more than something that will be given to us, is the perspective of the other party. But I just wanted to give you all just a conversation or a thought to think about. A thought to think about is it really about the first truth, the first thing that you established? Is it really about the first job you had? Or is it really about the first car that you bought, or the first house that you bought, or the first child that you had? Or, is it about the first education that you got, the first school you went to? What is it that you're holding on so tightly to that God cannot get something that is greater in your life to you, that is way beyond where you are today? I was thinking like, how many people really believe that this world is centered around only the way that they perceive it? In the conversation, there were so many ideas popping off in my head because I was like, what? Like, seriously, I know that it will be hard to let go, but look at the greater abundance of life that you can have, and how you could have 10 men lounges, or you could have 20 or 100 if there is no limit on the amount of income that you have? And how could your hard work and your efforts not be applied to the future wealth that you are receiving if that was something that you already learned? And then there was another mindset, and that mindset was, what about the children? Because again, in the show Bridgerton, the little boy who was, I would say, under the age of 12 inherited the millions. And so it moved him from a place of being a child to being someone who will be wealthy for his entire life. And he, having his family would receive every piece of inheritance that he has, or have access to, rather. So his family was receiving the access, and his father didn't want the access from the perspective of having to give up what he built, because it was his blood, sweat, and tears. And the other conversation that I had with the other person is, what if the kids didn't learn the same things that the person who struggled to get their family to six figures, what if they did not have the same upbringing? What if they did not learn to appreciate having, to work for something because everything was laid out on a silver platter? And it made me think about, whoa, there are millions of people on this earth, probably billions of people, who have this mindset that wealthy people don't get it. And we make this judgment by default, because if we don't have money, then we form our own opinions about the world and how it looks from our perspective, not realizing that in that same scenario, if we took a look at the people that were wealthy on the TV show and we looked at their lifestyle, yes, of course, you're always going to have someone in a lifestyle where it seems like they have no wisdom, they have no understanding, and they have no knowledge of doing what is right. They have so much money, they don't care about relationships or people because they've never had to go through anything challenging. And we think and assume that that's everyone. But I challenge this person to see a different perspective. Not everyone who has money or is born into money or comes into money, not everyone had to struggle to get there. And there are some really good people, some really righteous people who have learned the values that someone who did not have money or does not have money has learned, those values of how to treat people, how to run a country, how to be considerate for those who are less fortunate, how to look out for housing and health care, and how to look out for transportation. Think about if there were really seriously not one wealthy person that considered hard work, that considered having disciplines that would allow others to be able to flourish and have a decent life. Even if they aren't giving us their wealth, but they are giving people an opportunity to change. They're giving people an opportunity to be better. They are helping to build houses and land. They're helping to build roads, and they're helping to put up schools and hospitals. They're helping to provide fire departments and police departments, and they're helping to try to change the laws of the land. When you have wealth, when you have authority and power of that, the right authority, let me just say, and the kind of power that this young man had, even though it was inherited, it does not mean that just because something was given to you that you will mismanage it. And so that was the conversation that I was so passionate about, because I cannot really wrap my head around the same way I used to believe. I used to believe that being a six-figure earner would be something that would be so significant, and like that would allow me to have arrived. And yes, it may be more money than most of anyone in my family may have ever earned at one time. However, regardless of that, it has shifted my mind to understand that if you don't change your mind, no matter how many zeros are behind your name, then you will remain impoverished mentally. You will remain in a state of mind of scarcity, that you would never have enough. You will remain in a mindset of hoarding, which hoarding does not allow you to give anything away, and it allows you to just keep everything as though having everything is right for you. Having everything is not necessarily right if you understand the concept that none of this was yours in the first place, that you only have access. And once you understand that you only have access, and that as you are blessed with more, too much is given, much is required, right? That's what the word of God says. So with that being said, too much is given, much is required. If God gives you more and he's asking you to give up something that you worked so hard for, put all your blood, sweat, and tears in, and it doesn't mean that even if you are a person who was given a lot, it doesn't eliminate management. Your full requirement for being on this earth is simply about what you manage well. The more that you manage, the more that you will receive. So I just want to challenge you guys to think about what would be your choice in the matter. If you could go from a 5-figure or 6-figure income to an 8 or 9-figure income, and all you had to do was give up one thing, what would be your choice? How would you raise your children? Would they have a much better life, being that they inherited and they never had to struggle? And what kind of mindset would you have to teach them from? I challenge you to think about that, because if you're serious about growing and you're serious about changing your life for the better, then you'll always have to accept there will always be something you got to let go, and there will always be something greater that you will receive.